Good evening. My name is Jim Campanini. I'm the editor of The Sun, and I will be moderating this debate for the 2nd Essex and Middlesex State Senate District seat. I want to welcome our audience for coming out tonight. I want to welcome also our viewing audience on lowellsun.com. I want to thank the town of Tewksbury for helping us have this event at this wonderful facility, the Tewksbury Memorial High School Auditorium. It's really a great facility, and I urge everyone to come out sometime to enjoy something, an event here. I also want to thank School Superintendent John O'Connor, who helped us with this event, Chrissy Polomino, the school committee chair, who helped us, and also Dave Libby, who's the facilities manager, and his staff for getting this the stage all set up for this event. The candidates for the debate are State Senator Barry Finegold and State Representative Paul Adams. Our panel, from the left, Tom Zupa, the managing editor of The Sun. I have Jane Miller, the editor of the town crier newspapers, and also Bill Gilman, the editor of Tewksbury Patch. The format for tonight's debate is simple. The candidate receiving the first question will get 90 seconds to reply, followed by a 60-second rebuttal from the other candidate, and then we'll have a 30-second response from the initial person who received the question. As moderator, I will have the authority to ask a follow-up question or engage the candidates in more discussion if there is a complex and good discussion taking place. We will take questions from the panel for 50 minutes and then leave time for a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate. And then we will conclude the event. I ask that you hold applause until the end of our forum so we can get in as many questions as possible. Thank you. Since we did not have it pointed to us at the beginning, which we probably should have, I'm going to say that we're going to take this by alphabetical order. So Representative Adams will get the first question, and it will be given by Tom Zupa from The Sun.
Representative Adams, good evening. The legislature approved allowing the city of Lawrence to borrow $35 million straight out of its finances without a financial oversight board. Since then, we've seen headlines about criminal indictments, ongoing investigations, and questions about how well the city is being managed financially. Given all of that, the taxpayers of the district and the state who are paying for this have gotten their money.
Well, thanks, Tom, for the question. Thank you to everyone who's listening and watching and decided to stick it out for another hour. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and chat a little bit about this campaign. Over the last 2 years, I've looked at the receipts for the city of Lawrence, what it's spending money on, where the money's going to, and I believe that as I've looked over those receipts, that there is a lot of clarification that we have now that we didn't have in the last couple of years. So the city's finances are being managed. A big problem that I've seen is that when my opponent was state representative, he voted to cut local aid to the city of Lawrence by millions of dollars. And then only 1 year later, had to vote to bail the city out, to allow the city to bail itself out with a $35 million loan. So I think in this race, you have a very clear contrast between the two of us. I've stood up for local aid, been a consistent voice for Lawrence and for all of our communities. And I've also supported the policies that we need to get this economy going again, so that we don't have to allow communities to make these kinds of decisions and bail themselves out because their local aid was cut by somebody who represents the city. So again, you have a very clear contrast in this race. I support local aid. He's cut it. He's raised taxes killing thousands of jobs, and I voted to cut taxes. And I look forward to talking a little bit more about those issues.
Senator Finegold.
I also want to thank the Lowell Sun Choir and the Pat Wilson's debate, and also Tewksbury High School.
Yeah, can you put it up? Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I also want to thank the Choir, the Sun, and the Pat for hosting this debate, and also for Tewksbury High School for allowing us to be here tonight. We did put an overseer in place to oversee the money, and a result of that, the city is being managed financially at a better place right now. And as a result, the credit rating has increased. As far as the city goes, what we have to do moving forward is we have to create jobs. We have to improve the tax base, and make sure that people can get jobs and we can have a stronger economic base. What I've done in that area is I've worked to recruit companies there. I helped recruit Eastern Bank there. It's the first bank that has come to the city in 28 years on the north side. I've worked with Sal Foley on Riverwalk to have create more jobs in the city. And I think we also need to make sure that we train people to get the jobs that are out there. I mean, it does have a higher unemployment rate, but the key is to get people the skills they need to get the jobs that are out there. I think one of the things that have been successful about Lowell is what they did with Middlesex Community College. What we've done in the city of Lawrence is we've actually are expanding Northern Essex Community College, and we're going to have an allied health center that's going to train people in the area of healthcare and healthcare jobs. This is going to allow people.
Please wrap that up.
This is going to allow people to get the good-paying jobs and create, better revenue for the city.
Thank you. Representative Adams, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Jim. I do agree that we need to make sure that we're training workers for the new jobs that are out there, including new manufacturing jobs that have come into Lawrence and the Merrimack Valley. It is important that we do show leadership. It's one of the top jobs of legislators to show leadership, especially as it relates to the people's well-being. And certainly we have some agreement on that issue there. I think where we disagree is that I believe in a free market system that allows all employers, regardless of who they are, where they come from, to come to Lawrence, to come to Massachusetts. But what we've seen in Massachusetts over the last 10 years is a slow decline in employment in this state. NPR just announced the other day from state figures of the Department of Labor and Workforce Development that unemployment in Lawrence and in the Merrimack Valley general area is 11%. That's the highest in all of Massachusetts. So while they say things are good on Beacon Hill, it's a different story here. So we need to make sure that we're supporting the policies that will help the economy to grow.
Thank you. The next question comes from Jane Miller, and it goes to Senator Finegold.
Senator Finegold, you have been a major supporter of green energy initiatives, but several are stalled, bankrupt, or have left the state, including Cape Wind, Evergreen Solar, and A123 Systems, just declared bankruptcy this week. How do you support developing innovative or green jobs in Massachusetts today?
Well, one of the fastest growing sectors in our economy is green jobs. We have 70,000 people that are now being employed in this industry. And the thing about energy is, as a state, we spend about $22 billion a year in energy. And most of that money is going to not only out of state, but overseas, the basic countries that don't like us. So for us to really become independent, for us to really have job growth and really have this economy move forward, we need to become more energy dependent, and we need to make the energy here. That's why I support solar, I support wind, and this is not only it's going to be good for our wallets, but it is a huge economic development. So that is something that I think we have to continue to do, something that's important for our state, and I think the way we're going to create jobs in the future is through green energy.
Thank you. Representative Adams.
I'm an all-of-the-above guy. I think we do need to support a broad range of energy solutions. Supporting wind, supporting solar, I think is not the job of government to support it with enormous subsidies and tax breaks. I think the way that we do it is by allowing, again, the free market to run its course. I remember when I first took office as a state representative, one of the first companies that contacted me begging for support was Sunoco, because they wanted to bring a national gas pipeline into Massachusetts. And the legislature, of course, was holding it up. So I think it's job number one to make sure that we're helping the private sector to create jobs, to stay here and expand here. The free market is their best tool to allow them to be able to do that. I just don't think that we need to be be spending hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies for specific politically favored companies, but instead all free markets run its course.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
I think one of our biggest challenges, especially in manufacturing, and there's a good chance manufacturing is going to come back to our state, is still our high electricity prices. We have the 7th highest electricity prices in the country. So by having alternatives such as wind, solar, and other energy sources, we can become more competitive and we can bring manufacturing back to our urban areas. We can create jobs, but until we have a more competitive energy structure, we're not going to be competitive as a state, and that's why we have to find alternatives to basically, power our companies.
Thank you. I've got both candidates on the clock. I don't know if you people are timing out there, but the answers are very good and expansive, so I am giving them a little more extra time. So we're not playing favorites up there, but both of them are getting a little extra time, and as long as they keep to the issue, we'll have a good dialogue. Next question from Bill Gilman, and it goes to Representative Adams.
Thank you very much. Legislators talk a lot about constituent services and being in touch with their constituents. But I'd like to ask you how often and in what ways you communicate with the municipal leadership of the towns that you serve. Now, I'm asking this question specifically because, frankly, I haven't seen either one of you gentlemen too often at Board of Selectmen or school committee meetings in the town of Tewksbury.
Well, thanks for the question, Bill. And my response, I think it's pretty straightforward. I've knocked on thousands upon thousands of doors. I'm always in touch with the people. I answer phone calls in the middle of the night. I'm very, very responsive. I also have regular office hours where we have regular constituent meetings with individuals who are dealing with different state agencies or perhaps have issues at home that they need help sorting with. So I've been very responsive as a legislator, always put the people first that I serve. In regards to the municipal officials, I've always been a phone call away. We've met as a delegation and also individually with selectmen and school committee members, and are currently working on a couple of different projects to support the schools, supporting grants for playing fields, and the list goes on. But I've made it a point to be very accessible, very available, and in addition to that, I've been a very outspoken voice for their needs on Beacon Hill.
Thank you. Senator Finegold.
I see school committeeman Mike McNamara here from Drake. We talk all the time. I see Selectman Spoli from Andover, Selectman Johnson from Tewksbury. We talk all the time. I've got Selectman McGay here from Tewksbury as well. So we talk all the time, and we're constantly in dialogue, finding out what can we do in collaboration to move things forward. And I think that's really important, and I think it is important that we do talk. So there is the constant communication with our local leaders. One of the things that I've done to make sure that I'm in contact with people is I've had listening tours. I've had them in Tewksbury, I've had them in Drake, I've had them in Andover, I've had them in Lawrence. So I think one of the things that people in public office do too much is sometimes I think they talk too much. They don't do enough listening. And what we've done in these listening forums is we basically open up for people. And we've learned a lot. And I think that's something that's very important. I'm very proud of what we've done. I also did a telephone town hall. I basically reached out and called almost, thousands of people trying to understand what's on their mind, what's important to them. And I think that's how you can listen to your constituents, you be responsive, and I believe that's what I've done.
Representative Adams, 30 seconds.
No further comment.
Okay, thank you. Senator Finegold, if you can embrace that microphone, just get a little closer. People are still that's fine. Okay. The next question by Tom Zupa goes to Senator Finegold.
Senator, the Senate's hosted a series of debates, and this is the first one out of our offices. So we've met a lot of the candidates throughout the Merrimack Valley. During one of those debates, Senate candidate Michael Barrett proposed a 4% increase in the gas tax, which now stands at 42 cents per gallon. He says he wants this money to go directly to fixing the infrastructure of the state. Do you think this is a good idea? And if you don't, what is your plan to improve infrastructure?
My answer is I don't think it's a good idea. I think we have to make sure that we're using everything we have right now as efficiently, as effectively as possible. The reason why I voted against the MBTA bill is I think there's just a lot of problems about how it's being managed, the what's involved, and making sure that not only it's being run properly, but that we get the resources that we need out here. What has frustrated me is we've been waiting for another line for the Wilmington cable line. We have federal funding, we're getting the double tracking, but it's so important that now we need more trains. So constantly Boston gets, I feel they always are getting their services improved. I think Boston and Merrimack Valley need to get our services improved. So I've been fighting for that. I talked to a lot of commuters that want to have more frequency in their train schedules, and that's what I've been fighting for.
Representative Adams.
My approach is to first look at where we're spending money on Beacon Hill. We spend more money every single year than we did the last year, to the tune of more than $1 billion. This is as long as I've been a state representative. And that's just dead wrong. My opponent, on the other hand, believes in nickel and diming the taxpayers of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's why he voted for an additional penny on the sales tax. I don't know, it was 8 or 10 years ago, in order to support transportation funding. It's the wrong solution because when you raise taxes, it's a downward spiral. But what I've supported is making sure that we know what we're spending money on in this monstrosity of a $33 billion budget. Making sure that we're focusing on what our priorities are instead of what the go-along to get-along crowd wants, which is shuffling hundreds of millions of dollars in additional money to the criminal enterprise, which is the probation department. So setting priorities in stone and following through on those, something I've done as a state representative. I sat on the floor of the House of Representatives as well, and called out the leadership, and also talked about how important it was to make sure that we're not continuing the debt spending, and make sure that we have a real priority in transportation spending, so that we're not continually going back to people who are saying, let's raise taxes. So I think there's a different way.
I'm going to give you a little more time to respond.
Yeah, I think one of the things, Tom brought up the issue of transportation. One of the things that I've been working on as well is the I-93 interchange. We just did a transportation bond bill, and I was able to get money for the environmental study to move this project forward. But we also need partners from the federal government. I personally met with Senator Brown, Senator Kerry on this issue. I've talked at length with Congresswoman Songs' office. I've talked with Lieutenant Governor Murray and Governor Patrick about this. So we need partners as well in the federal government as to move some of these transportation projects forward, and that's what I've been working on as well.
If I can just interject here, I know it seems to be the mantra of the day that no one wants to raise taxes, and you say it's not good during a recession, but yet we still have to fund government, public schools, public safety. When is it a good time to raise taxes? And I want to ask that question first to Mr. Adams.
I think, again, Jim, first you look at what you're spending money on. I've put in requests to the Patrick administration, my colleagues have, as to what specific line items are in the budget, and they can't tell us. So why don't we first determine what we're spending money on? Why don't we set priorities in the budget? And that's not what's happening up there. You have people who constantly come back to the taxpayers and say, we don't have enough. And they use legitimate costs like transportation infrastructure spending, healthcare, supporting local aid, and our teachers and our firemen and our police. And these are the things that they're doing. They're holding them as ransom so that they can continue to raise taxes, come back to the taxpayers and ask for more. So I think there's a completely different way.
Thank you. Senator Finegold, I'm going to give you 90 seconds too, and then we'll move it on to the next question.
I think the most important thing we need to do is have balanced budgets. I think one of the things that I'm proud about is we've not passed on our liabilities to future generations. And as a result of that, the state has got an increase in its credit ratings. We have one of the highest rainy day funds in the country. I think we're only behind, Texas and Utah. So I've always pushed for balanced budgets. I think it's really important. But we always have to, I think we have to find third ways. And third ways is trying to create jobs. I think something that this town should be very proud about is Thermo Fisher could have left this community. But not only did they stay here, but they're expanding here. And that took a lot of teamwork, working with our local officials, working together as a team. And that's which I think really important. And that's why I go back to the I-93 interchange. That's something that I think we all have to continue to work on, something that I've been able to get results on, something that I'm going to continue to push for, because that means if we're able to get that interchange, we're going to be able to get companies to come in here. It's going to create local tax revenue. It's going to create jobs, which is going to make income tax revenue. And that's what we need. So we need to continue to fight to create jobs, making sure that we're moving our economy forward. And that's what I've always fought for.
Thank you very much. Mr. Adams, 15 seconds.
Yeah, I'll say that I'm running for state senator to take the state in a different direction. If you want somebody who's constantly raising your taxes, making job growth second to raising taxes and satisfying the big young crowd, then you can vote for that guy. But I think there's a different way, and I think I've shown them that what we can do through my leadership.
Thank you. Jane Miller, get us back on track. This question goes to Senator Finegold.
I was going to ask a different question, but I guess we'll go back on track. In 1993, the Education Reform Act created the MCAS exam, and that tests improved academic performance for students and also the level of classroom instruction. Over a year ago, the state legislature approved the federal government's Race to the Top program in order to receive $250 million in one-time funding. Did Massachusetts sell out its high-quality MCAS test?
I don't believe so. I think what we've done and what we've done in the state legislature, we give more flexibility. Example is what's going on in the state of Lawrence right now, where basically we have allowed the state to take over the schools, and as a result, we have someone who has some flexibility. And in this flexibility, for the first time, you're having partnerships with charter schools. We're finding new ways to basically, educate young people. So I think we have moved in the right direction. I do think we do need flexibility. And I always think our schools, we can do better, but we do have some of the best schools in the country. But once again, I think the key for our future generations is to give them the tools and the resources that they need. That was why I was proud to support this new high school, help get the funding for the school. That's why in the town of Drake, I was early supporter of their new high school. That's going to be a great institution for the town. I worked with Chancellor Meehan, and we had a meeting up there to try to have more programs that are going to work with young people. So UMass Lowell can work with Tewksbury, with Drake, with Andover, training people, having people run classes with STEM and other educational things that are getting the jobs of the future. So I think we need innovation, we need flexibility, and I do believe we have that in the state.
Representative Adams?
Well, I think the question was, did Massachusetts sell out by accepting $250 million in federal funds? And part of the response, I think, is that yes, because the money was received with the anticipation that it would go to the teachers' unions. What we need to make sure that we're doing is supporting goals for our schools that make their way down to the students by improving test scores, by improving academic performance across the board. I think he was talking about a 2010 law that passed, which allows more flexibility for local communities to work with a plan that works for them. So allowing more charters into the district, allowing students to have a choice, and parents and families to have a real opportunity to decide which direction they would like their student to go. If they want to stay in a public facility, that's fine. If they want to use a charter school, that's fine too. But that shouldn't be dependent on how much money is coming from the state or, in this case, from the federal government.
Senator
I
Finegold?
would just add that I have, something I actually agree with Paul, and I have been a strong supporter of charter schools. I do think we have to find alternatives for education, and they work well. In certain areas there are long waiting lists for our charter schools, and I think this is something that is good, and we should continue to build on. And that's why it's very exciting what's happening in the state of Lawrence, where for the first time you're having true partnerships between charter schools and public schools. And the goal is to have what is the best way to educate young people, and that should always be our end game. How can we best educate young people? Because not only are we competing against other school districts, we're not competing against kids from North Carolina, but we're competing with kids from all around the world. And I think the best we can make is in our young people, and give them the flexibility and the resources to do that is something I've always pushed for.
Thank you. Bill Gilman will ask the next question to Representative Adams.
Thank you. Smoking regulations, laws about seatbelts, limitations on certain food and beverage sold in schools. Have local and state governments gone too far in legislating the personal conduct of residents in Massachusetts?
Well, I'll tell you who is over-regulating, and it's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's state government. It's the Department of Secondary and Elementary Education, Public Health Department, that wanted to ban cupcakes from our schools. That's way too far, and I think everyone can agree with that. I'm not going to tell local communities how they should be determining what nutrition standards are, or whether or not kids should be eating cupcakes in their schools. But what I will say is that I'm running for state senator because I believe in limited government, allowing communities to make decisions and not the state. I believe in greater support for our communities, supporting local aid, bringing back the resources to our communities that they need in order to function in the best possible way. And they do that by having consistency, a leader who's principled, who believes in fiscal discipline, someone who will support them, and who they know will be reliable. But the fundamental part of your question, Bill, was that where I think my opponent and I disagree is that I believe in principled fiscal discipline, and I believe that government is too large and that there's so much government intrusion in our families and our businesses and the marketplace.
Thank you. Senator Finegold, I'm going to give you a little extra time for this response.
Yeah, I was contacted by, I think it was actually at one of the Tewksbury town meetings, and a parent came up to me and was flabbergasted about this cupcake rule. So we all got together, we all supported it, and we got rid of it. And that is too far. But there is a concern about there for young people, and the amount of kids that have diabetes, the amount of people that are overweight. So I do think school nutrition is important. And I also think that it has not been a bad thing that we banned smoking in our restaurants. I mean, I can tell you firsthand how difficult it is to see someone that has lung cancer. Someone, actually in my case, didn't even smoke. So I do think that every so often it's okay to have regulation. Where I get concerned is where we get so caught up in the minutiae, we get so concerned that we miss what the greater object is in certain situations. So I think sometimes it's okay, but I do support making sure that we have a good environment to do business, making sure that our businesses can succeed here.
Representative Adams, 30 seconds. Wrap it up.
No further comment.
Okay, thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Finegold. Senator Finegold, and Tom Zuppel will ask.
Senator, there's a proposal right now being talked about in the administration to tax online sales. The estimates are there's $339 million in tax revenue. Amazon has been in the state for a year. It is yet to be taxed. Why do you think this process has taken so long? And why do you think the legislature has been talking about other taxes rather than going after low-hanging fruit?
Well, I think what's frustrating about this issue is you wish the federal government step in and have uniformity and basically say what can and can't be done. The hard thing is basically finding a nexus with internet sales. And I am concerned about what would happen. There's talk that if there was a sales tax on internet, that Amazon will pull out, other companies will pull out. So there is concern, and I think that I prefer the federal government to speak up, give some clarity to this thing, and have us have a better understanding. But I am very concerned about what it would do to local jobs and to consumers.
I think the most important thing is that we understand why this is being proposed, is because the folks on Beacon Hill and the Go Along to Get Along crowd want more of your money. And they're looking for every opportunity to raise your taxes, to not look at fundamentally where we're spending our tax dollars. And instead they're looking to raise your taxes, and they're looking to feed their big spending habits. It's so important that, again, we look over the budget, see where the money is being spent, prioritize, and not constantly look to the taxpayers. And in this case, small business owners who many times work alone or just have a handful of folks in their shops who make their living with online sales or distribution or manufacturing small scale of some type. And this is who it affects. I sat on the Revenue Committee, formerly known as the Committee on Taxation, and this proposal came up. And I was an outspoken voice against it. I was the only person on that committee that opposed it. And because of my opposition, it didn't go forward. They'd rather deal with somebody who they think might go along to get along. And I think it's the wrong way, and I think we need to make sure that we're prioritizing instead.
Thank you. Senator Feingold, 30 seconds. Well, I just want to interject here. What do you tell the small business owner in Tewksbury and Wilmington that have to charge a state sales tax, and Amazon.com can sell that same product online and not charge any tax? The consumer will be probably going to Amazon.com and other big box retailers, while that Main Street business has to suffer the consequences. I mean, isn't this a fairness issue?
I think one of the things, my wife is a small business owner. She owns a women's clothing store. One of the things that she's been thinking about is what is her online presence? How is she, going to, reach more customers? Because customers can find her really from anywhere. So I think for small business, they're also trying to figure out what is their online presence. Can they increase their market share? I think the beautiful thing about the internet, though, is there's no walls. I mean, you can reach customers almost anywhere at any point. So as much as they may feel that it's not fair, there's also a huge market that's open to them as well. So it's always trying to find that balance. And once again, I wish the federal government would give us more clarity on this issue and not potentially have our state at a disadvantage.
I'm sorry I got my districts mixed up. It should be Andover, Drake, Lawrence, and Tewksbury. I'm sorry, but Representative Adams, answer please.
Well, what's unfair is constantly raising taxes, including sales tax, by 25% in the year 2009, eliminating 10,000 jobs, and with small business owners bearing the brunt of that in the middle of a recession. That's what's not fair.
Thank you very much. Jane Miller, you asked the next question. It's going to Senator Finegold.
Senator Finegold, sequestration at the federal level could significantly impact the local economy with multiple defense contractors in Massachusetts and Raytheon here in Tewksbury. What measures would you support at the state level to avoid drastic cuts, if at all? What would you do?
I think one of the things that the state's been doing well. One of the challenges is what's going to happen with the federal government, what's going to happen in December, and we're very dependent. I mean, we're a great state where we have a lot of military contracts, we have a lot of healthcare facilities. So I mean, we are bracing for potential cuts. But as I've always done in the past, we have to have a balanced budget. We have to only basically deal with what we have to spend. And we need to make sure that we use every tax dollar as efficiently, as effectively as possible. So I just think we have to wait and see what the federal government does. But compared to the rest of the country, we're doing a lot better. Our unemployment rate is 6%, the national average is 6.3. Our national average is about 2% higher than that. And we just have to see what they do, and we'll make adjustments at that point.
I think it's so important that we come to terms with the big spending binge that this state is on, and come to terms with the fact that we cannot sustain it. I've been an outspoken voice in the legislature for making sure that we reduce our over-reliance on federal spending. This especially relates to health care. We receive billions of dollars from the federal government to pay our bills for folks who receive care through subsidized plans at the state level. And that also pours it over into defense spending. And it's sad that the federal government can't get its act together, and we're looking at thousands of job cuts in Massachusetts. That's just not right. But what we can do at the state level is make sure that we're not over-reliant on federal spending, and an outspoken voice against that.
Thank you. Senator Feingold, 30 seconds.
Yeah, and that's why I think we have to continue to try to build our own economy, in the area of energy, in the area of healthcare, area of just new companies that are coming up, and there's some great tech companies that are in the area. So we have to continue to create our own jobs and not be reliant on the federal government, and just try to make sure we have a great skilled workforce. I think one of the frustrating things out there is, in the past spring, there was a statistic that came out that, we had 240,000 people that were unemployed, but there was 120,000 job openings. And the problem with that is that a lot of people can't get the jobs out there because they lack the skills. That's why places like Middlesex Community College are so important. Northern Essex are so important. Our local technical schools are so important. We need people to get the skills that are out there to get the jobs that are. And there's a great article in the Lowell Sun about a company that wanted to hire welders but couldn't find the people to get these jobs. And I think that's what we have to continue to do. Make sure that people have the skill set. If we have a good skilled workforce, I feel that we can deal with anything the federal government may send our way.
We are more than halfway through our debate. We've answered 10 questions. You just have to love democracy, I'll tell you. The next question is from Bill Gilman, and it's going to Representative Adams.
Thank you, Jim. What are your feelings on the ballot initiative to legalize what amounts to assisted suicide here in Massachusetts?
Yeah, it is assisted suicide. Whether it's prescribed or assisted physically, it is assisted suicide, and I'm morally opposed to it. I'm vehemently against it. I think it's wrong, and I am completely against giving state sanction to it. I think it's important that we don't allow this to pass, and the legislature needs to make sure that it's working with the people who have concerns about individuals who have this kind of an interest and feel that they would like to end their lives in the manner of their choice. But I disagree that this is the way that you do it, and I'm morally opposed to it and would never support it.
Senator Finegold.
This is a very personal issue for me. Being what I had to go through the summer with my sister. Those final weeks are so hard, and they're so difficult. And I don't know if this was available, what we might have done. I know how difficult a decision, one way or the other, for a family. So I just feel like a question like this is so personal and something that individuals need to make, that I would just say that, frankly, this is an individual decision. People should make their own choice on something like this. So I just think it's an individual decision.
Does that mean that you would be in favor of the ballot?
Honestly, I'm just undecided on the issue itself. And like I said, I go back and forth on the issue, but right now, I just frankly, to be truthful, I'm undecided on it.
Representative Adams, anything? Okay. The next question goes to Senator Finegold. Tom Zupa will ask the question.
Senator, there's another ballot question regarding allowing marijuana for medicinal use. Where do you stand on this? And if this question were to pass, would you support licenses being allowed to sell marijuana in the district?
Well, I'm against it, and I understand that people are in pain, they need medicine, and I appreciate that, but I'm concerned about the implementation. So basically what they're saying is there's going to be 35 different places to, distribute this. Because it is legally federally, we can't distribute it to our pharmacies. And we've had to we had to stand on our heads to deal with OxyContin. So I'm just concerned, how are we going to deal with marijuana? So I don't like the system that they're proposing to distribute this, and that's why I think it's flawed, and that's why I'm against it. I sympathize with people that have, very tough, ailments that need treatment for it, but I'm just concerned about the distribution of this, and that's why I don't support it.
No, I don't support question 3. I think it'll do a lot more harm than good. It'll continue to add to the to drug culture. It also puts the people in violation of federal law, and something that, in good conscience, I don't think we can do as legislators. Also, you look at illegal drug use in other states that have medical marijuana law, and it's increased dramatically. I think it's the wrong direction. I do have a lot of sympathy for people who are suffering and who are in pain. I sat on the Public Health Committee for 2 years and heard hours of testimony by individuals who are suffering. My heart definitely goes out to them. But I think that on the whole, this bill does a lot more, this question does a lot more harm than good, and I don't think it should pass.
Anything to add to that, Senator Finegold? Just one quick question, 30 seconds each. Okay, the ballot initiative process. Okay, are you in favor of this, or do you think this is the role of the state legislature to create legislation? Should we have citizen petitions in Massachusetts? Representative Adams, 30 seconds, just quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Massachusetts is very unique in the citizen petition process. When they feel that their concerns are not being met, then they take it to the people. They collect signatures to put it before them. It's a unique aspect of our democracy, but Jim, the problem with the ballot process is that it's coming about so frequently, especially over the last decade or so, because Beacon Hill isn't meeting the concerns of the people. Beacon Hill fails to act. It's the power brokers and the go-along-to-get-along crowd that decide what they think is best for their colleagues and also for the people of Massachusetts. And this extends to the ballot question process as well.
Senator Finegold.
Yeah, I do think it plays a good role, and every so often you can get sides that come to a decision. The issue of Stand for Children, where basically we have a system where if there are going to be layoffs, it's not necessarily totally based on seniority. So there was a compromise between people from Stand for Children and then the teachers union. So I thought that was a good example of ballot question force an issue to get done. But every so often we have something with the auto repair bill where there was a compromise, and now one side's going back on that and now pushing forward with the right to repair to move forward. So it can do some good, but every so often there's an agreement that's made and then people go back on that agreement, which I think is unfortunate.
Thank you. Jane Miller will ask the next question to Representative Adams.
I asked this question during the last debate as well. A few minutes ago, you talked about not pushing our liabilities onto future generations. I think Senator Finegold mentioned the questions to both of you. So where do you stand on the problems we have with unfunded pension liabilities and other post-employment benefits that are sitting out there that are going to be the responsibility of us and future generations? And there is currently no mechanism that I'm aware of to solve this problem. Do you have any ideas? What's the toolkit that's going to help municipalities?
Well, Jane, that's something that every city and town across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is dealing with to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. In Tewksbury alone, it's $160 million. In Andover, it's $220 million, and there's similar numbers in the communities throughout the Merrimack Valley as well. I support common sense, reasonable reforms to the pension system. The municipal pension system hasn't had serious reforms for many years. The state also has a pension system that is dramatically underfunded to the tune of $25 billion. And there needs to be an overhaul across the board with the state pension system, with municipal pensions. And this is how I think we're going to start to get a handle on the enormous costs that continue to spiral out of control. But what's happened on Beacon Hill is that the supermajorities decided that they'd rather block reform and instead offer token reform. And what happened over the last 2 years of pension reform was that $5 billion was saved over the next 40 years. They're kicking the can down the road, not offering serious reforms. And that's why I talk about the need to have a serious conversation about pension reform and make sure that we're meeting our liabilities, but also protecting the taxpayers. And I think we can do that with some common sense reforms that have gone largely ignored, including by my opponent.
Senator Finegold.
We have passed pension reform, which basically, increased the age for people to retire. We did away with some of these things where you work one day, you get a full year. The Billy Bulger amendment, where basically you can include your housing for your pension. So we have done some, I think, very proactive pension reform. But the thing is with local communities is a lot of them do have full funding schedules that we allowed them to push off to, originally I think it was 2028. Now I think it's early in the 2030s that they're going to be fully funded. And that's something we have to push. The challenge that we have is, what they're basing their returns on may not actually get there. And that's what's, I think, really challenging. A lot of the time they base it on 8%, 7.5%. And I don't know about many of you, but if you looked at your 401k statement, in the last 5 years, you're not getting 7.5% or 8%. So that's where the challenge is going to be. So I think we're going to really have some potential problems in the next 5 to 10 years if they don't hit those benchmarks. And we may have to lower those benchmarks to become more realistic with where the market's at. So hopefully with this potential recovery, we'll start to improve and the benchmarks will be better.
Senator Adams.
Yeah, there were some important reforms that were made, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I've offered several ideas on pension reform in my time in the legislature, and there's been zero support for anybody's pension reforms over the last 2 years. And so that needs to change. There's a culture up there that is iron-fisted against making significant changes. That's going to change when we have more Republicans up there, we have more balance on Beacon Hill. We need to make sure that the state is not pushing costs down onto communities, and that communities are not bearing an extraordinary burden. And we need to offer them reforms that they can make in order to save costs. And it eats into municipal operating budgets. It eats into the number of teachers and police and firefighters that we can hire and keep on the payroll. And as we've seen in Drake and in Tewksbury, that hundreds
Wrap it up,
of
Mr.
personnel
Adams.
have been laid off, and it's due largely because of a lack of reform.
Senator, would you look at anything
I
that?
would. One of the amendments I filed, which did not get passed, was basically every 6 years would raise the year for retirement by 1 year. I couldn't get a single Republican or Democrat to co-sponsor with me. So I have put myself out there. I do think that we do have to continue to raise the age. This is something that, fortunately people are living longer. It's not something that is a negative thing, just a reality situation. And I did put myself out there. I did file that amendment. And I think that's really serious pension reform. It's something that I thought was the right thing to do.
Representative Adams, would you have voted for that amendment?
Well, I'd have to take a look at it. It sounds like it's in the right direction, but let me look at it first before I comment.
The next question by Mr. Gilman goes to Senator Finegold.
Thank you, Jim. Casino gambling is now, or will very shortly be, a reality in Massachusetts. As I recall, when that debate was going on, that was something that you would oppose. What do you see as the role of the legislature as this process now moves forward?
Well, one of the things, and I did oppose casino gaming, I just don't understand in the long run how we're going to have 3 casinos in Massachusetts, 2 in Connecticut, 1 in Rhode Island. I assume at some point New Hampshire's going to get 1, Maine's going to get them. So we'll probably have more casinos in this area than probably anywhere but New Jersey or Nevada. So I don't know how all these casinos can function. But it is law, it is moving forward, and basically the way we set up the law, we basically have taken a hands-off approach. There's a commission, they're going to decide who gets the licenses, they're going to enforce it, and it's really their role to move forward.
Well, casinos were proposed as a revenue solution, not because it's the magic solution to more jobs in Massachusetts. Again, it's Beacon Hill looking for more revenue because they don't believe they have a big spending problem. I oppose casinos for a couple of reasons. Absolutely, the market is saturated. It looks like Salem, New Hampshire wants to have a casino, or they want to have more slots. Again, they're rating it as a piggy bank. It's supporting one politically favored industry instead of letting the free market run its course and allowing any business of any type to come into Massachusetts, with certain limitations, of course, but allowing the free market to run its course and bring the jobs that we need to Massachusetts. That's the real solution. Not raising taxes, cutting local aid, putting pressure on local taxpayers. The real solution is to have somebody who's consistent for our taxpayers, somebody who's consistent for our communities, and somebody who will support all of our job creators.
Senator Finegold, 30 seconds. Okay. The next question goes to Representative Adams, and it's Tom Zupa. We're within about 12 minutes, so let's try to speed this up a little before our closing statements.
Representative Adams, one of the great government buzzwords today is transparency. But the state's open meeting law and public records law are weak at best. And if you ask anyone who goes into a town or city hall and tries to get some documents, excuse me, they'll tell you the same thing. If you win this seat, in 2013, you draft a bill that will strengthen those laws up to and including fines and/or criminal sanctions.
Well, Representative Charlie Murphy, on his way out of the House of Representatives, filed an open records law change, and I wholeheartedly supported that. Sadly, it was mostly just Republicans that supported that. And it's also sad that he felt that on his way out of the legislature, that was the best time to propose a bill instead of having an honest, open discussion about it. And my response is absolutely, I support changes to our open records and open meeting laws. Transparency is very little and few and far between on Beacon Hill. We make decisions behind closed doors. When there's executive sessions on the committees, they close the doors to the public and video cameras come off. And I see some heads nodding up here. I can see my to my legislative mate sitting in the audience as well, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. We probably have this discussion several times a week. So there needs to be a more honest, open process. I've put forward a couple of ideas for changes to open meeting law and also to public records laws, and look forward to continuing to support them.
Senator Finegold.
I've supported strong government reform legislation, ethics reform. One of the things that you can see now is if you go online, you can see what's being spent, the checkbook, where basically every dollar is being spent. You can even see our salaries. You can watch online the Senate and the House. I think it's too bad that they don't broadcast the House and the Senate. That's something I'd love to see them come back, but I'm just not sure the cable operators will allow it anymore. You can track those online and you can see really what's going on. So I do support transparency, and I think any way that we can make it more open to the citizens, I think is a good idea.
Representative Adams, quickly.
Yeah, just real briefly. I think there's now an open checkbook online on mass.gov because it was one of the best ideas to come out of the 2010 Treasurers campaign. I think there was a candidate who promoted that idea, and then Steve Grossman, to his credit, put that online. But I think it was largely due to the good idea that came from the Republican candidate.
State Senator Finegold gets the question from Jane Millen.
So this is a 40B question. You haven't really touched at all on this. Do you support the lowering of the affordable housing allotment for 40B law in Massachusetts from 10% to some lower figure, so that cities and towns have a little bit more control over the projects that come into their neighborhoods?
Well, I think one of the things that need to be looked at is how do you count low-income housing? I mean, do you count if someone has a trailer park? Is that considered low-income housing to get to your 10%? So I think those are things that we can look at, because you can lower it, but then if you're not counting certain things, then it may not be as effective. As far as this issue, it did go to the ballot. The voters did shoot it down. But I think one of the things that I think is the way to deal with 40B is if a town knows that it's under and they can work with, people proposing these potential developments, that works so much better than having, controversy, having people put in 300 units. That hurts our schools. It doesn't help manage the budget. So whatever that number, that if you do lower it, you have to work, I think, in a fashion to really try to control it and not have these 300 units come in and just, throw off the school system. So, once again, I think if you really want to try to reform it, maybe look at what you deem as affordable. I think that could potentially help with the numbers.
Representative Adams.
I support repealing the 40B law altogether. It's been one of the most egregious state laws that I've ever dealt with. There are more people that have expressed more anger at that piece of legislation than almost anything else. I think it needs to be repealed. It's sad that there are reform initiatives that have been shot down by the legislature over the years, and then it had to be, then it went to the ballot, and unfortunately got shot down, largely because of maybe some misinformation about the bill. But I do think that we need to make sure that communities have options for affordable housing, but not allow these 500-unit projects to come into our communities, change their faces, reduce the home values around them. I've seen this in every one of the communities that I represent. There's no consistency to it. Why don't we support instead affordable housing law for existing downtown areas or urban areas or areas where there's already large.
Could we wrap it up, please?
That can be used for that purpose.
Anything quickly? Okay. We're going to get to the last question from Bill Gilman, and it's going to go to Representative Adams.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to double down on the buzzwords of transparency and honesty here with this last question. Great leaders talk about growing through experience and learning from their mistakes. And I'm going to ask each of you, for each of you here, what has been your greatest error in judgment as an elected official, and did you take steps to correct that error?
Well, one thing I would say is, in retrospect, I would have voted against the budget for fiscal year 2012 as opposed to for it. I voted against it for fiscal year 2013. Having had an opportunity to dig through it over the last year, and also for fiscal year 2013, I knew specifically more what I wanted to look for and how to identify line items. The budget process is skewed. It doesn't work for our communities. It doesn't work for the people. I don't even think most of the people on Beacon Hill, including the supermajority party, understand what's in the budget and what the priorities are. It's a process that doesn't work. I definitely would have voted against the budget for fiscal year 2012 because it's full of big spending items that I completely disagree with. I voted for it because there were some good items that were Republican reforms, and I was proud of those and happy that because of the Republican wave that came into the legislature 2 years ago, those reforms happened. Never would have been otherwise. So looking at it in retrospect, that's an area where I would have made a different choice.
Senator Finegold, 60 seconds.
Yeah, I think, as you grow older, you learn from things you maybe should have done better in the past. So when I was younger, I definitely had very determined, wanted to, do big things for the district. And I don't think I spent enough time listening. And that's why, when I was elected state senator, I said, you know what, I need to do these listening forums. I think too many times people in elected office tell you what they think. They don't do enough time listening to hear what you think. And that's why I hosted these listening forums. That's why I think they've been helpful. And that's why I think I've been an effective state senator. And I think that's what matters is that, you do represent the people. And it's really important to hear what's on their mind. And you can't make everyone happy. It's hard to do, especially when you represent 160,000 people. But one of the policies I've always had is, I don't care if you agree with me or disagree with me, I want to hear what's on your mind. And we may walk away from that meeting and say, guess what, we still agree to disagree, but at least we had the discussion, because I think there's an old line that you don't know what you don't know, and no one has a monopoly of ideas, and I want to hear what's on people's minds. So I think one of the things I think I have gotten a little bit better at is listening, and that's one of the things I spend a lot of time doing. People say to me, you're a quiet person for an elected official. Well, I think that's okay, because I want to be known as someone who's a listener, and that's something I think I've done.
Representative Adams, quickly. All set. Okay. I'm just going to ask one question before we do closing statements. The probe into the state drug lab, Governor Patrick has already appointed a special counsel, David Meyer, to look into the investigatory costs. It's already been proposed that it's going to cost $50 million just to look into the 30,000 cases. Governor Patrick is proposing a supplemental budget bill, and yet district attorneys and mayors are already starting to put in their own debts that could amount up to another $25 million. That's $75 million. Then there will be liability for the 1,034 criminals that are expected to get out of jail. Okay. Should the taxpayers have to pay for that money in a supplemental budget, or should it come out of the rainy day fund? Senator Finegold.
Well, it's one of those things that's incredibly frustrating. For the mere fact there could be criminals on the street that have done wrongdoings to people, and they make it out. So it's incredibly frustrating. It's something that makes my blood boil. So I don't think that it should come from the taxpayers. If we do something, it probably should come from the rainy day fund. But I think the most important thing right now is we really need to find out definitively how this happened and to make sure this never happens again, because this is something that really I think is incredibly frustrating to the families of these victims, to the taxpayers, and you've got to do better than this.
Thank you. Representative Adams?
Well, I think that having the taxpayers foot the bill for that kind of a mistake and oversight is absolutely outrageous. When I first took office as a state representative, the legislative leaders were talking about a $5 billion budget deficit and how they're considering different tax increases, spending cuts, some reforms, but then only a couple of months into my term, they're already talking about passing a $500 million supplemental spending. The spending is absolutely out of control, and it's got to stop. That's going to happen when there's more balance on Beacon Hill, specifically when there's more Republicans. And the other scandal, by the way.
I don't want you to filibuster. Quickly.
All right, the other scandal, of course, is the criminal enterprise, which is a probation department. At a time when my opponent was raising taxes, cutting local aid, make sure to send hundreds of millions of dollars in additional money to the probation department.
All right, let's move on to closing arguments. Closing statements, I'm sorry. Since Representative Adams did the first question, we're going to give him the last statement. We're going to let Senator Finegold go first.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Lowell Sun, the Crier, the Patch, and the Tewksbury High School for hosting this debate. I want to thank my opponent for agreeing to this debate. It's been a true honor to serve as your state senator. It's one of the most wonderful positions someone could have, and something that makes me incredibly humble. To be here in the town of Tewksbury, as a young person, I grew up in this community. I attended the North Street School. I watched the Plains land, which is now the Tewksbury Country Club. And as I tell people, if I was a good boy, my mom would take me to Capitol or Stewart's and I'd get a matchbox. So I have a lot of fondness for this community, but I also have a lot of fondness for the other four communities I represent: Andover, Lawrence, Tewksbury, and Drayton. And I think one of the most important things I mentioned earlier that someone at a state senator can do is to listen. And that is why I've had listening forums throughout every single community in this district, in Andover, Tewksbury, Drayton, and Lawrence. And in those times, I've heard what's on people's minds. In the area of education, they said we need more local aid. That's why I fought for and delivered increases in local aid in all four communities. In the area of jobs, people were concerned about what type of business environment do we have here. That's why I reached across the aisle to my good friend, the Republican leader, Bruce Tarr, and together we worked on freezing unemployment insurance, which did not hurt workers, but at the same time save businesses money each month. I also talked with our seniors, and they're concerned about prescription drugs. That's why I supported drug coupons in our budget, which is going to help seniors pay the high cost of prescription drugs. Our seniors are also concerned about can they stay in the community they've lived for many years. That's why I continue to support the Senior Circuit Property Tax Credit. And my office has sent out hundreds and hundreds of mailings to people to try to tell them to take advantage of this. And we've helped people do this as well. And as much as it's important to listen, I've also been responsive. When there are many people in the town of Tewksbury who said, you know what, we need a new high school here, I came out early, and I supported this high school that you're all in now. And the same thing in the town of Drayton. When there was talk of, we need a new high school as well, I came out early, helped and supported, and I'm going to help deliver the money for that town as well. Same thing for the Bancroft School in the town of Andover and other projects in this district. Because to me, being a state senator is being responsive and getting the job done, and that's what I feel I've done. It's been a true honor to serve as your state senator, and I respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you all very much.
Representative Adams.
Thank you very much, Jim, and to our panelists, and for the opportunity to debate here tonight. And it's been a pleasure, and talk a little bit about what's on our minds, and grateful for the opportunity. What you get with me. This is a cause for me. I've always fought causes that are near and dear to my heart. This is certainly one of them. I'm running to take our state in a new direction. This is something I began as your state representative. I believe in government based on values of principled fiscal discipline and limited government, greater support for our communities, less government intrusion in our businesses and in our families and in the marketplace. As state representative, I've fought successfully for tax reduction, for local aid. I've fought against the obscene spending and the taxpayer-funded giveaways. If elected state senator, I'll continue working on exactly those same priorities. I think my opponent has done the opposite, which illustrates the big differences between us. He's raised taxes by billions, and I've cut taxes by millions. He's destroyed 10,000 jobs, and I've been working to restore local aid and restore a better climate for private sector job creation. His big spending leads to higher taxes and more government intrusion and overregulation. You have a real clear choice, and my only desire is to serve you. I love the people of Andover, Drayton, Lawrence, and Tewksbury. I've knocked on thousands upon thousands of doors, and it's been a wonderful experience. It's been a great honor to serve as your state representative, and I love the great honor of serving as your state senator. And I very humbly, respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, November 6th. So thank you very much.
This concludes our historic double-headed debate. I want to thank the town of Tewksbury for allowing us to have this debate, this double-headed debate in this great forum. And now you can applaud for the candidates and the moderators.